Good morning. How are you doing today, Jarrett?
I'm well, Arrow. How are you?
Absolutely fantastic. I've been so excited to talk with you, and the reason why is because it's books like Sunshine that are carried forward. In other words, many, many, many years and decades later, people will still have this inside their personal libraries. And God, what is that like for you, knowing that you're going to be talked about long after this book's release?
I mean, first of all, thanks for saying that. I have 45 books out now, and two of which are young adult graphic memoir, like Sunshine is. And what I've come to learn is not every single book will have that effect or have that longevity, but regardless, everything you put out there, whether it sells just a few copies and is only on bookshelves for like a month, or if something does really well and then is read for years and years to come, like every single thing I put out there, I come to realize that it connects with somebody on some level, and that's the magic in what I do. That I get to use my imagination and communicate that imagination with words and pictures. And I'm lucky to have that work published, and it ends up in the hands of readers. And I feel just so incredibly lucky that that's the case, because that's all I ever wanted to do in life.
How do you deal with the 75% off rack? And because, I mean, we all go through that. In fact, there have been times with my own books on Amazon that I'll sit in there and say, just give it to them free. I just want them to read the story. Just give it to them for free.
That's right. That's right. Well, thank God we have libraries. Thank God we have brave librarians who are making sure those books are on shelves and stay on shelves, and provide that access to information for everybody.
So you were the student, weren't you, at Camp Sunshine?
I was one of the student volunteers. Yes. So
Wow.
I was 16. And I was one of a handful of ragtag high school students who jumped in a van, breakfast-style club, breakfast club style, where we were just like, there was like the jock, the stoner, the AP nerd, the theater kid, the artist. None of us had anything in common, and we were thrown in the school van and driven up to Maine and thrown into this amazingly powerful work and serving these kids with life-threatening illnesses like cancer.
See, that's what I love about the rhythm of this book is that it's serious, but it's lighthearted, it's relatable, but it's also an educational tool, because it allows the young adult readers to say, hey, I want to do something like this. I've never done it before.
I hope that this book does inspire young people to think outside of themselves and find some sort of service-oriented work that they can do in their communities.
Now, graphic novels, I'll tell you what, I'm a huge fan of these, and the reason why is because this is how my grandson learned how to read. He would not learn in first through third grade, the words on a page or the paragraphs in the books, but with the second that we introduced him to graphic novels, changed him forever.
That's beautiful. That's amazing. And how great that your grandson and kids today can have these graphic novels being published just for them. I mean, talk about sounding old-timey, but I have to say, when I was your age, we only had a comic strip in the newspaper once a day. And it was only in color on Sundays.
Yeah, man. I lived by Beetle Bailey, man. That's what I had when I was a kid.
Nice. I'm a diehard Snoopy fan over here.
So let me ask you a personal question on that level. When they introduced Woodstock, I mean, you may not be as old as I was, but the thing is that I was there when Woodstock was introduced as a character, and I was upset because I didn't understand.
I don't know life without Woodstock. I can't relate any kind of similar outrage.
So when you put a graphic novel together like Sunshine, and you allow your personal experiences come to life, what is that like to relinquish it to the page?
I mean, it's a pretty intense experience. Memoir is really difficult to write. My first graphic memoir was called Hey Kiddo, and I had just went in assuming it would be difficult because that story centers on how I dealt with my mother's addiction to heroin, and how I dealt with her absence, and how I dealt with not knowing who my father is, and how I was raised by my maternal grandparents who drank a lot. And so that was, so obviously going to be a difficult thing to write. And with Sunshine, and, I have so many happy memories from my work at this camp. It still was really difficult. Memoir is really tough to write because one thing, it exposes things that you didn't process yet. It opens your heart again to some of these more intense experiences. And there are two different levels of courage one needs to get when you're making graphic memoir. One, you need to have the courage to write it. Okay, so once you have the courage to write it, that's one hurdle you need to cross. But there's something about writing it, and my graphic literature starts with a script, so it starts with just the text. And when you see a bunch of words on a page, that doesn't look like anything when you pull back, but when you draw these pictures and you pull back, you're making eye contact with these people again. And it's an intense experience.
I can relate with that only because to get people to even go anywhere near my writing, I did paintings on a canvas, and then I would put my writing on the canvas with the painting. And so I'm jealous of you that you can tell a story through the pictures as well as through the words that you put inside the paragraphs.
Yeah, it's a delicate balance when you're communicating stories with words and pictures because, the pictures have the exact same job that the words do, which is to communicate the story. And I've learned over the years that you make sure that the words tell one part of the story and the pictures tell another aspect of the story, and that the words and pictures are never telling you the exact same sentence. So, having the words and pictures communicate the exact same part of the story is the equivalent of writing the same sentence twice in a row.
Isn't one of the subliminal messages of this story that to help inspire young adults to find their safe space, and that space is very important to personal growth?
I mean, it's so important to personal growth, and it's so important to think beyond yourself, which is hard when you're in the thick of dealing with your own trauma. It's hard when you're a kid and you're dealing with childhood trauma and you're aware in real time that is childhood trauma. It's hard to think beyond yourself. And my work at this camp taught me that there are so many people dealing with so many different things, and not just the obvious, not just the families that are there to be at the camp because one of the children have cancer, but there's a scene in which I'm there at night at the off time with my fellow camp counselors, and one by one I realize like, oh, every one of my peers, they have something off happening at home, and even though there might be the jock who is gets all of the accolades, that doesn't mean that kid has a perfect home life by any means.
Yeah. And that to me is where you find community in the way that when you finally start recognizing each other for, not just our victories, but our faults.
Absolutely.
Wow. So I got to talk to you on a one-on-one level here. And when it comes to TikTok, because you are a superstar on TikTok, and man, when the government is talking about how they're going to shut that down, I pray for people like you because you have relied so much on it being a major league tool in your success.
I appreciate you saying that, and that's, I think, what's really missing in a lot of this conversation is that there are so many small businesses that rely on the outreach. I'm connected with so many small independent booksellers where they don't even have any employees. It's just them. Like, that's how small they are. And they've managed to double the amount of books they sell because of the outreach that they're shipping books all across the country. For me, I rely on public speaking. And so the pandemic obviously cut that short. And I'm instantly pivoted to YouTube, making YouTube content, and then TikTok. I mean, initially TikTok for me was my wife and I would just marvel at the creativity that strangers had. And we would just say like, wow, like Facebook really makes you hate everyone you've ever known, but TikTok will make you love everyone you've never met. And then I started creating content. I started giving tutorials on comics. And, now I've grown to, I don't know, something like 20, maybe 25,000 followers on there, around there. And also like, I say it's my island of misfit toys. There's the professional aspect of like, I get my work out there, but my FYP is like the puppet people and the booksellers and the musicians and the indie filmmakers. I'm collaborating with an indie filmmaker out of Texas about possibly adapting Hey Kiddo into a film. I connected with another indie filmmaker there to create a little animated, like it's like an animated collage that will open the readings I do for the Sunshine Book Tour.
Wow. See, creative people have got to speak here when it comes to this TikTok thing, because all we're hearing is a lopsided view of why they want to do something, but they're not realizing that real people with real issues as well as with their art are we're using this as the tool that it is, and we need to somehow unite as creative people.
Yeah, and that's just absolutely it. I mean, people will say, well, you could do short form video on Instagram or YouTube, and it's not the same.
Right.
That TikTok algorithm, or as some of the lawmakers like to call it, the algorithm. It's just the way it connects people is astounding. And you know what? The whole argument that it's like stealing data, which is just so absurd when you consider like if I can be having a conversation with my family about a certain product and then see that as advertised on Facebook later, like,
yeah,
TikTok is not my biggest concern.
Yep. All right. What's your website so listeners can find out about you and give you love, because you've got 45 books that need to be read. So we need to send people in your direction.
Thank you, Arrow. I am at studiojjk.com or at Studio JJK across social media.
You got to come back to this show anytime in the future, dude. You're always welcome on this stage.
Thank you, Arrow. I appreciate you. I appreciate you having me. I appreciate you having this platform, and thank you for you, man.
Well, you be brilliant today, okay?
You too. You be well. Thank you so much.